It's Ashley from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop. And I'm sure you clicked on this video because wedding season is now upon us. And although we're not having our usual wedding receptions, we are still having some smaller gatherings and smaller weddings. So the wedding cake still plays a very important role. So let's get into it. So for those of you that are a bit more crafty, or maybe you're into baking yourself, but you're not necessarily an expert baker, you might be thinking about making your wedding cake. And making your wedding cake is actually not as stressful as you might think it might be. So what are the pros of making your wedding cake? Well, of course, you are going to be in control of how it looks. So you know it's going to look exactly how you want it to look. The next pro is obviously that it's going to be way cheaper. So what are the cons of DIYing your cake? Well, it might not turn out exactly how you want it to turn out. And on top of that, it is an added stress. So if you are doing a lot of other things for your wedding yourself, and if you're DIYing a lot of different elements of your wedding, then making sure that you have time for the cake can be a little bit challenging, because a cake isn't something that you can make super in advance, especially if your design is a little bit more intricate. Then you do have to wait until you get a little bit further along, closer to your wedding date. And I know for myself, leading up to my wedding day, I was in panic mode and I was doing a lot of different things, even with a wedding planner. So you want to make sure that you know your limits. The next thing you need to consider is your venue. Are you having an outdoor wedding? Is it going to be indoors? Is there going to be air conditioning? These are the things that really matter. Because if you're having an outdoor wedding and it's going to be quite warm where you are, then chances are you don't want to have something like a fully buttercream cake. Because a buttercream cake does have that ability to start sliding around a little bit or melting off. Now, buttercream for the most part is pretty stabilized, but if it's a sweltering hot day, there's nothing we can really do to save your cake. The other thing that you need to think about as well is, do you want this cake on display for the whole night, or is it something that you just show for a little small part of your wedding? The longer that you want that cake out, the more that you need to think about your choices. Naked cakes, not a great choice. And the reason for that is because they're sitting out in that open air and they have no protective buttercream covering. It's very thin and very small. So chances are, once you actually get cutting that cake, it's going to be super dry. Fondant cakes are much better at protecting your cake. So if it's a bit of a warmer venue, or if you want to have your cake sitting out for a number of hours, then I always suggest that we go with fondant, because fondant really helps protect everything really nicely, and your design will hold up a whole lot better. The next thing you need to consider is, are you going to even cut your cake? Are you going to eat your cake? Are you going to do a cake cutting ceremony? What is it that you want to do with your cake? Not everybody cuts the cake at weddings. Sometimes people just leave the cake there and it's just kind of a showpiece. My favorite way to do a wedding cake is to have everything fake except for the top tier. And especially during these times, having a fake wedding cake is probably the way to go, because you can serve your guests with cupcakes or some other types of desserts, and then that top tier is saved just for you and your husband or your wife, and that will be the cake that you cut in front of everybody. It's also a great keepsake. So of course you're going to serve a couple slices maybe to you at the sweetheart table, or if you're having a head table, you'll serve some to them, and then that other half of the cake you can wrap really tightly, put it into another container, and put it into your freezer for a whole year so that you can have an anniversary cake for that first anniversary. Outside of this time period, I really like the idea of serving my guests cupcakes instead of the actual cake, because you're often charged a cake cutting fee at very many different venues. I've seen cake cutting fees start at around 50 cents per slice and go all the way up to $4 a slice. So to me, that just isn't worth it. Even if you only have 50 guests, $4 times 50 is still $200, which is quite a bit just for a serving fee. If you're having a more relaxed gathering and you're going to be doing the cake cutting, or one of your friends or family members is going to be doing the cake cutting for you, that is also a tricky venture because you do have to untier all of the cakes, take everything apart, and then make sure that you cut things super, super evenly so everybody gets a slice, which can be a little bit stressful. The next thing you need to talk about is your budget. So wedding cakes are very expensive in general. Anytime you veer away from one-tiered cakes, you're looking upwards of $200 automatically. And I would say that in the industry, and this is completely my own opinion, but in the industry of weddings, you're not necessarily charged more just because it's a wedding. You're charged more because there does need to be a lot of extra care taken for something that is for somebody's wedding. Messing up a birthday cake or having a few errors here and there on a birthday cake is probably not as big of a deal as having some errors on a wedding cake. That's just the way that I see that. I would say the average wedding cake cost is probably around $400 or so. And that's not even for something super, super elaborate. That's probably about a 3-tiered cake and maybe messy iced or even naked iced or just a few buttercream decorations here and there. Now, luckily, we are in a time period where making wedding cakes look really rustic and kind of a little bit less perfect is super, super in, which is fantastic because it's easier for the cake decorator to do and it's going to be a lot cheaper for you. If you're going into a cake consultation or a wedding cake tasting, you need to make sure that you have realistic budgeting. If you walk in there and say, I don't want to spend more than $100, then you have to expect that you're getting something really, really simple. If you're able to up that price from $400 to more like $800, you're probably going to be able to accomplish a lot with your wedding cake. That being said, with things like Pinterest and Instagram, the cakes that are more fancy and not just sticking florals into a cake are going to be a lot more expensive. Fondant detailing is going to be more expensive. Anytime you have sugar flowers, that's going to bring the price right up. So you just need to have realistic budgeting expectations and expect that yes, the decorator is going to probably stay within your budget, but it may not be as intricate of work as you might expect. And hopefully your cake decorator will be very upfront with you about budgeting. Always pay for delivery. No matter what the cost is, pay for the delivery. I know that a $75 delivery fee might seem a little bit over the top, which is a fee that I have heard is very, very common, especially where I live. But I am telling you, it is 100% worth it. And here are my reasons for that. Number one, if your cake is just one tier, then you can probably get away with not paying for the delivery fee and having someone pick it up. But the chances of wedding cakes being one tier are very small. Usually, they're probably going to be at least 2 tiers. On an average, it's going to be 3 tiers. And delivering and picking up a 3-tiered cake is very challenging because once that cake is out of the baker's hands, there's really nothing that they can do for you. If the baker made a cake with a dowel going all the way through, but the person that picked up your cake took a turn a little bit too fast and it fell over, there's really nothing we can do about that. And during wedding season, bakers often don't have time to go back and fix your cake, especially if it wasn't a mistake that they made. And I often find in my experience, the person picking up the cake is usually somebody that just wanted to do a nice favor for the couple getting married. So they don't really understand that they need to have a certain vehicle to go and pick up the cake, and they know very little about picking up a cake. And it's also usually somebody that's by themselves. I don't know why, but they always tend to be by themselves. And that can be very, very stressful. Not only that, but not a lot of vehicles, if you're getting an over-the-top cake, can actually fit a 5-tiered standard cake. It's really, really difficult. It's a lot of added stress for the driver or the person that is doing you the favor, or if it's for yourself, and it just leaves more room for imperfection to happen. Usually when a baker delivers the cake to you, they do more than just picking up the cake and giving it to you. I know for myself that I would make sure that all the cake tiers were unstacked and I would finish stacking and decorating on site. For the most part, if it was a cake that was a little bit more simplistic and I knew that things would just stay right put, then I would deliver it as is. But having a cake decorator deliver your product is really, really great, because if there are little imperfections or things that happen, it's on the baker and it's not on you to fix. Realistic expectations. Now, I think in my early adulthood, I was very bad at having realistic expectations, especially when it came to my vision. And visions are so important to have. I love vision boards. I think it's fantastic to know what you want your wedding to look like. But there does need to be some flexibility. And sometimes too much importance can be placed on that wedding cake. Try to remember, it is just cake. It is just a nice showpiece, and it is something that is edible, and you really can't keep forever. So it is, of course, totally fine to have a vision of what you want it to look like, but keeping in mind with budget, venue, all the things that we've talked about, those are all factors that will change the way that your cake will look. And plus, on your wedding day, there's so many things going on that even for myself, a cake lover, I really didn't notice too much about my cake until way later, until I looked at the photos and I said, oh, I didn't know that that was on my cake. A cake artist is going to try as hard as they can to make your vision come alive. But if you don't show up with very specific pictures, then it's going to be really, really challenging to make sure that it looks exactly how you want it to. Even if you're a more relaxed person and you are open to different ideas, you probably still have a set of parameters that you don't want to go outside of. And the most important thing is to remember that everybody's vision of something is very, very different. So it's best to be specific, and it's also a really good idea to look back on their work. If you're happy with their work, then you can probably pick a cake that's similar and say, I want something like this, but maybe you want the colors changed, maybe you want to mix and match a few different things from their work. If you are the type to get disappointed easily by something that doesn't pan out, then it's probably best if you choose something that the decorator has already done before. That way you kind of know exactly what you're getting. I hope those tips help all of you future brides and grooms out there. And I want to give a huge congratulations to all of those people getting married this summer. I know it's a bit of a different time and maybe not what you envisioned your wedding to be like, but I hope that above all else, you have delicious desserts and cake. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading daily, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. And bonus, sometime this week, I'm gonna show you how to DIY your wedding cake. I promise it'll take less than an hour. Bye!